William Millen here for GetMoreSports.com, and we talked a lot about Indiana in the offseason and how this was maybe the most talented offensive roster that Tom Crean has had during his time in Bloomington, and maybe, honestly, his most talented roster overall. And yet, when they start the season, defensively they're a mess. And it was hard to tell whether it was schematically a mess, whether it was a mess because the guys didn't care about defense, or it was a mess because somehow these tremendous athletes just can't play defense. And we kind of figured that it wasn't the last one, but we couldn't quite put our finger on it. And then Big 12 play starts. They run out to a highly impressive record at, I believe they were 7-0. And then all of a sudden, they lose their first game against Wisconsin. They go on, they pick up 2 more wins. They're sitting at 9-1. Then they lose to Penn State. And all of a sudden, you're looking at this team and wondering, okay, well, is their gaudy conference record because they're playing absolute no-ones? Or has Indiana really improved from the beginning of the year? And it's becoming clear now, at least in my eyes, that Indiana ran out to that record because they were playing nobody. The Big Ten has a lot of bad teams in it right now. And, of course, Indiana is not one of those bad teams, but they took advantage of that. And good for them. You have to beat the teams in front of you. But when you lose to Penn State, I think that's kind of an indictment on you. I mean, losing at Wisconsin, there's no shame in that. But now, closing the year, you have 7 games, 5 of which you have to play Iowa twice, you have to play Michigan State, you have to play Purdue, and you have to play Maryland. I mean, that's not exactly the closing stretch that'll help you separate from the pack unless you do work in that stretch. Unless you can win 3 of those 5 games. Say you beat Iowa at home. Say you beat Maryland at home. And then you're talking about Purdue and you're talking about at Iowa. Maybe you split those. All of a sudden, Indiana is in really good position for a really good NCAA tournament seed. And we're not talking about Tom Crean and his lack of ability to live up to the pressure. We're talking about IU taking the next step under Crean, something that we've been waiting for quite some time. You get swept in those 5 games, and I'm not saying that Indiana's going to all of a sudden miss the NCAA tournament. Their RPI computer numbers are going to be great, but they're only going to have a Notre Dame win in the non-conference to point to. You've got a win over Wisconsin at one point in conference play. You've got a couple wins over Michigan, sure, but where's your signature win? They won't have it unless they get one in the next 7 games, 5 of which are coming against the best teams in the Big Ten.